It was a crisp Tuesday morning, the kind where the air feels sharp and the world seems just a little too quiet. I was buried deep in the university library, surrounded by towering stacks of textbooks, cramming for my organic chemistry final. My mind was racing through molecular structures when my phone buzzed, snapping me out of my focus. A notification from the scholarship office lit up the screen, and my heart sank as I read the subject line, "Urgent academic performance review required." My hands trembled as I opened the email, my pulse pounding in my ears. The message was short but chilling. "Dear Miss Sarah Coleman, we have received concerning documentation regarding your academic performance. Please report to the Financial Aid Office immediately with your parents to discuss the continuation of your merit scholarship. This is a time-sensitive matter." I stared at the screen, confusion swirling in my mind. My grades were impeccable. I'd maintained a perfect 4.0 GPA for 3 years straight. This had to be a mistake, didn't it? But the phrase, "with your parents," twisted my stomach into knots. Why would they need my parents there? I hadn't spoken to them in months, and they lived 3 hours away. Something felt terribly wrong. I shoved my books into my backpack and practically sprinted across campus, my bag bouncing painfully against my spine with every step. The financial aid building loomed ahead, a squat, unassuming structure that suddenly felt ominous. As I rounded the corner to the office, I froze. Through the glass doors, I saw them, my parents, sitting in the waiting area, dressed in their Sunday best as if attending a formal event. My mother was inspecting her nails with a studied, almost performative casualness, while my father scrolled through his phone, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. They weren't supposed to be here. They hadn't visited since dropping me off freshman year, and even then, it was a tense, perfunctory goodbye. My mind raced with questions. How did they know to come? Why were they here? I pushed open the door, and my mother's voice greeted me, syrupy sweet and dripping with false concern. "Sarah, there you are, sweetheart." We were so worried when the school called us. My stomach churned. The school hadn't called them, I knew that instinctively. They had called the school. "What's going on?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. My father stood, placing an arm around my shoulders in a gesture that might have looked fatherly to an outsider, but felt like a vice grip to me. "Oh, honey," he said, his tone patronizing. "We're just here to help sort out this little situation." Before I could respond, Mrs. Davidson, the scholarship coordinator, appeared in the doorway. "Mr. and Mrs. Coleman, Sarah, please come in," she said, her voice clipped and professional. The office was small, made even more claustrophobic by the presence of several people. Mrs. Davidson sat behind her desk, flanked by 2 administrators I didn't recognize. In the corner, almost hidden behind a filing cabinet, sat Professor Williams, my biochemistry professor and academic advisor. His presence was unexpected, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of hope. "Please have a seat," Mrs. Davidson said, her expression grave. "We need to discuss some serious concerns about Sarah's academic performance." I opened my mouth to protest, but my mother cut me off, her voice thick with crocodile tears. "We're just devastated," she said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue that seemed to materialize out of nowhere. "We had no idea Sarah was struggling so badly." "Struggling?" I said, my voice rising in disbelief. "I'm not struggling." "Denial won't help you now, Sarah," my father interrupted, his tone stern and accusatory. "We've seen the transcripts." Mrs. Davidson cleared her throat and pulled out a folder. "Yes, the transcripts your parents provided are concerning," she said, laying the papers on the desk. "According to these documents, you failed every class this semester, multiple FS across the board." I leaned forward, my mind reeling. The papers looked official, complete with my name, student ID, and a row of glaring red FS where my A's should have been. "These are fake," I said immediately, my voice shaking with conviction. "These are completely fake. I have straight A's. I can show you my actual grades right now on the student portal." My mother's voice turned sharp, cutting through the room like a blade. "Sarah, stop lying. This is exactly the behavior that got you into this mess. The drinking, the parties, the boys." I stared at her, utterly dumbfounded. "What?" I said, my voice cracking. I don't drink. I spend every weekend in the library. My father shook his head, his expression one of exaggerated sorrow. This is what addicts do, Mrs. Davidson, he said. They lie, even when confronted with evidence. We've been trying to get her help, but she refuses to come home where we can monitor her properly. That's when it hit me, like a punch to the gut. This wasn't about my grades. It was about control. It had always been about control. 3 years ago, when I'd earned a full merit scholarship to study biochemistry at this university, my parents had been furious. They'd wanted me to stay home, to attend the community college where my mother worked, to remain under their roof and their rules indefinitely. The scholarship had been my ticket to freedom, my escape from their suffocating grip. They'd been trying to drag me back ever since, and this elaborate lie, was their latest attempt. Mrs. Davidson began to speak, but Professor Williams suddenly stood, his quiet presence commanding the room. Actually, he said, pulling out his laptop with a calm determination, I'd like to share something interesting. All eyes turned to him. He was a reserved man, typically content to observe from the sidelines, but there was a fire in his eyes now, a quiet resolve that made my heart skip a beat. What's this about, Professor? Mrs. Davidson asked, her brow furrowing. Well, Professor Williams said, connecting his laptop to the room's display screen, I have a rather unusual habit, call it professorial paranoia. I BCC myself on every single grade submission, every email to the registrar, every academic document I file. My parents exchanged a quick, nervous glance, and I felt a spark of hope ignite in my chest. I also record all my office hours, with student permission, of course, for quality assurance, he continued. So imagine my surprise when I saw these alleged transcripts showing Miss Coleman failing my class, when I have documented evidence of her A+ performance. The screen lit up with a cascade of emails, official submissions, timestamps, and my actual grades, all showing a perfect academic record. This must be a mistake, my mother stammered, her composure cracking. We got these transcripts directly from the registrar's office. Did you? Professor Williams asked, his tone mild but piercing. Because I have an email from the registrar stating they've had no contact with you whatsoever. In fact, they flagged any parent requests for transcripts of students over 18 without written consent. My father's face was turning red, his voice rising in indignation. How dare you imply? I'm not implying anything, Professor Williams interrupted, his voice steady. I'm stating facts. But there's more. He clicked to a new screen and my jaw dropped. Miss Coleman, did you know your parents visited campus last week? He asked. I shook my head stunned. Security footage, he explained, displaying a grainy video. Here they are, entering the computer lab in the library. And here, he clicked again, is the login record showing someone accessed the transcript template files from that exact computer at that exact time, files that are supposedly secure, but can be found if someone knows where to look, say, if one of them works at a community college with similar systems. My mother's face had gone pale, her hands gripping the arms of her chair. Mrs. Davidson leaned forward, her voice sharp. Are you suggesting these transcripts were forged? I'm not suggesting anything, Professor Williams said, his tone unwavering. But I did take the liberty of inviting someone else to this meeting. The door opened, and a campus security officer entered, accompanied by a woman in a crisp suit. This is Detective Morrison from the City Police Department, the officer said. She specializes in fraud cases. Fraud, my father said, standing abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is ridiculous. We're trying to help our daughter. By submitting falsified documents to a federal financial aid office? Detective Morrison asked, her voice calm but cutting. That's a felony, Mr. Coleman. Fraud involving federal education funds can result in up to 5 years in prison and $20,000 in fines. We didn't, my mother began, but Professor Williams continued, unfazed. I have here a recording from Miss Coleman's visit to my office hours last week, where she mentioned her parents had been pressuring her to leave school. Sarah, you gave me permission to record that session, correct? I nodded, my mind flashing back to that tearful meeting. I'd poured my heart out to him, describing my parents' relentless calls, their threats, their attempts to undermine my education. He played a short clip, and my voice filled the room, shaky but clear, recounting how my parents had threatened to force me home if I didn't leave voluntarily. "That's taken out of context," my father shouted, his face contorted with anger. "Is it?" Professor Williams asked, his voice calm but unrelenting. "Because I also have emails from Miss Coleman's other professors, all confirming her excellent performance. Dr. Martinez in organic chemistry says she's the top student in her class. Professor Thompson in physics calls her exceptional. Should I continue?" The room fell silent, the hum of the laptop the only sound. Detective Morrison pulled out a notepad, her expression all business. "Here's what I think happened," she said. "You wanted your daughter to come home. When she refused, you decided to force the issue by making her lose her scholarship. You came to campus, accessed the computer systems, likely using Mrs. Coleman's community college credentials, and created false transcripts. Then you submitted them to the financial aid office, hoping Sarah would have no choice but to return home once her funding was cut. You can't prove that," my mother said, but her voice was weak, barely above a whisper. "Actually," Detective Morrison replied, "we can. Digital forensics is quite advanced these days. Every document created leaves a trail. Every login is recorded, and forging academic documents is a serious crime." Professor Williams turned to me, his eyes kind but resolute. "Sarah, I want you to know that all of your actual professors have been notified of this situation. We've all submitted letters to the scholarship committee confirming your real academic standing. Your scholarship is safe." Tears streamed down my face, relief, anger, and vindication all crashing together in a tidal wave of emotion. Detective Morrison turned to my parents, her tone firm. "You have two choices. We can handle this criminally, which means arrests, trials, and likely jail time. Or we can handle this through a civil agreement, where you cease all contact with Sarah, pay restitution for the time and resources wasted on this investigation, and undergo mandatory counseling. You can't stop us from seeing our daughter," my mother shrieked, her facade finally crumbling. "Actually," I said, finding my voice at last, "I can. I'm filing for a restraining order today." "Sarah, please," my father said, his tone shifting to a wheedling plea. "We only wanted what was best for you. You don't understand the world." "No," I cut him off, my voice steady and strong. "You don't understand. I'm not your property. I'm not your prisoner. I'm a grown woman with a 4.0 GPA, a full scholarship, and a future in biochemical research. And I'm done with both of you." Mrs. Davidson, who had been silent through most of the ordeal, finally spoke. "Mr. and Mrs. Coleman, I'm going to have to ask you to leave campus immediately. You're now banned from all university property. Security will escort you out." As my parents were led away, my mother shot me one last venomous look, but I held her gaze, unyielding. Professor Williams placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice soft with genuine concern. "Why did you do all this?" I asked, still reeling. "The BCCs, the recordings, why?" He smiled sadly, his eyes distant. "I had a student once, years ago. A brilliant girl, pre-med. Her family sabotaged her education to keep her under their control. By the time we figured out what was happening, it was too late. She'd lost her scholarship and had to drop out. I swore I'd never let that happen again." Mrs. Davidson apologized profusely for the ordeal and assured me my scholarship was secure. Detective Morrison gave me information about filing a restraining order and accessing victim services on campus. That night, I sat in my dorm room, staring at my real transcripts on my laptop, all A's, just as they should be. My roommate brought me a cup of tea and sat with me as I processed everything. "They really thought they could get away with it," I said, still in disbelief. "Narcissists always do," she replied, her voice gentle but firm. "But you had something they didn't count on, a professor who gave a damn." The next day, I made a bold decision. I added a minor in criminal justice to my biochemistry degree, determined to understand the systems that had almost been weaponized against me. Professor Williams wrote me a glowing recommendation letter for a summer internship with the FBI's Forensic Science Division, a dream opportunity that felt like a new chapter opening. My parents took the civil agreement, likely because their lawyer warned them they'd lose in court. They were ordered to pay $10,000 in restitution and complete 200 hours of community service. I haven't spoken to them since, and I don't plan to. Sometimes, I wonder if they ever truly loved me or if I was just another thing they needed to control. But most days, I don't think about them at all. I'm too busy studying, researching, and building the life they tried to steal from me. I graduated summa cum laude, with Professor Williams hooding me at the ceremony, standing in for the family who wasn't there. As I walked across the stage, I thought about how differently things could have gone if he hadn't been watching, documenting, protecting. Now, I work in forensic biochemistry, using science to solve crimes and bring justice to others. And yes, I BCC myself on everything, just like Professor Williams taught me. He still teaches a seminar on recognizing and documenting academic fraud, and the first slide of his presentation is always the same: trust, but verify, and always keep receipts. The restraining order was approved without challenge, turns out. Judges don't look kindly on parents who commit federal fraud to control their adult children. My story isn't just mine anymore. It's a reminder that truth can prevail, that allies can make all the difference, and that no one gets to rewrite your future but you. Please feel free to comment below if you liked this. Remember to like and subscribers for more.